Good morning, grade 9s, and welcome back to Quarantine English with Mr. Fouché. So you might remember from the last lesson, we did all the elements except for plot of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, of course. So today, we'll just be focusing on plot, which is your sequence of events in a chronological order, which means in time. So let's get started. I'm going to group the content together as much as possible because this lesson can't be too lengthy, which is a problem, of course. So every single time we're going to be using this little graph, so to speak, of our action. I'm going to try and explain everything there. So we're first going to start here with this little section, which will give me my setting, my characters, and also the reason for the story to exist in the first place. The event that sets all the other events in motion. So we start off, of course, with Charlie's context. We find out about Charlie, who is a young boy in a very impoverished situation. He lives in a horrible little house, basically, with two main rooms, grandparents in the one room, his parents and he as well in the other room. So it's not a very big space, and we find out only the father has a job as a toothpaste cap screwer, which obviously is not a high-paying job, so they are struggling financially. We also find out about Mr. Wonka and about his factory, and we get context about that as well. Context here refers to background information. Okay, so we know what to work with. We find out about Prince Pondicherry, who has this chocolate palace created by Mr. Wonka, and it is of course done in a desert to show you how impossible it was, but Mr. Wonka, being who he is able to do this, showing you how fantastic he is as a character, because he can create unrealistic things. And then that is pretty much the beginning, the first part, in a way the introduction to the novel. The next part stands sort of on its own. This is the reason for all the other events to exist. And it is the invitation sent by Mr. Wonka. We do find out that 5 golden tickets have been placed in 5 random chocolate bars that have been distributed around the world. So any random 5 people are going to get these golden tickets and will be given a prize. 2 prizes to be precise. The first one is that you'll get a lifetime supply of chocolates and sweets, which sounds fantastic. And then the second thing that you'll get is a tour around the chocolate factory. Also, everyone wants to go to this chocolate factory because it hasn't been seen for 10 years, for an entire decade. So no one has been allowed in or out, because previously when Mr. Wonka had normal workers, we find out that recipes were stolen and copied in other places. So Mr. Wonka lost faith in the people to look after his recipes. So now we can continue with the main sequence of events. So we have basically started with a context. We find out characters, we find out setting, and we find a reason to go on an adventure, or a reason for certain events to unfold. So that's where we will go next. So this part that I'll be explaining here will basically be what we call the rising action. So rising action is going to be right about here. So all the events that happen in order to make us want to know more. It almost creates suspense. Well, it does. And the first thing that happens is we find out about the winners in certain orders. So the first person to get a golden ticket is Augustus. Augustus Gloop. We find out he's a very overweight little boy, young boy rather, not little, which is a main characteristic of this character. Very important to remember, because all of these characters are in a way foreshadowed. So each of their personality traits are going to lead to their downfall at the end of the journey in the novel. So Augustus, our greedy boy, or gluttonous boy. We can write down gluttonous. Okay, the next character that we are introduced to is the character of Veruca Salt. Now, Veruca, on the other hand, is a spoiled girl. So she gets whatever she wants. We find out that if she doesn't get anything, she just throws a tantrum and her father gets it for her anyway. which is negative reinforcement in this way. Well, technically it's positive reinforcement of throwing tantrums. We'll get to that later, but just remember that she's spoiled and that her being spoiled will be her downfall. Now, the third thing we'll be talking about of our rising action part is actually not the next golden ticket winner, but the birthday of Charlie. So, Charlie's birthday. Okay, which is an attempt in getting a golden ticket, of course, for the young boy. The parents are very, you can almost say, grown up about it. They remind him that the chances of getting a golden ticket is very slim. The only person to really keep the hopes up is Grandpa Joe, who is the inspiration in Charlie's life regarding this thing, because he always tells Charlie, oh, you can do it, you are capable of it. But we do find out that the chocolate bar that Charlie gets once a year on his birthday does not contain a golden ticket. We get on to our fourth thing to talk about, and now we get on with our list. So we have Augustus, we have Veruca, and the next person to win a golden ticket is Violet Beauregard. Ooh, that's, I'm not sure what letter in the alphabet that was, but you know, I'm the creator of it, I'll receive my award later. We get Violet. Now, Violet is obsessed with gum. Okay, so she has an obsession with gum. Apparently she is one of the best gum chewers in the world. She has a record for chewing a piece of gum for the longest amount of time. You know, she sticks it behind her ear, showing you how disgusting it is. Remember that this will be her downfall as well. And the next character is Mike TV. Mike. And he again, also obsessed, but with TV. And violence. We're running out of space there, but the word is violence there. The I might be a little bit horrible, but never mind. So this is the next thing we find out. Mike is obsessed with television and violence, and this will be his downfall in the end as well. Now, I'm just going to erase this so we have more space to work with. Now from here, which was point 6, if I'm not mistaken, that we'll be talking about is another attempt by Grandpa Joe to win the golden ticket. So we find out that Grandpa Joe has enough money to buy another bar of chocolate. So another attempt. He and Charlie, they attempt to get another chance at a golden ticket, but fail again. This also again reinforces that Grandpa Joe is the person who keeps helping Charlie with this dream, keeps the dream alive. Now the next part, which is one of the darker sequences in this novel, is the father loses his job. So Mr. Bucket loses his job. This is a fundamental thing to create the setting, to almost enhance it. So we know that he was poor. We know that Mr. Bucket was the only person with a job. Now he doesn't even have one. So we have 7 people without an income, or a big income, because now Mr. Bucket is taking strange jobs on the side, very tiny amounts of money, like scraping snow off of pavements, for instance. So now it is even worsened. The setting is in a way deepened, showing you truly how poor they are. The physical descriptions of our protagonist shows you that you can almost see the skeleton beneath his skin. So it's a very graphical way of explaining what poverty truly is. So very important point this, it shows you the low point of our protagonist's life. Then we get on to the next thing to talk about here, which is Charlie finding some money, and then which leads to him getting a golden ticket. So Charlie gets a golden ticket. Okay, so yes, Charlie picks up some money on the street by pure coincidence. and he takes it to the first shop he can find. He buys a bar of chocolate and eats it within 30 seconds flat. He then looks at the money on the table and thinks he's going to take most of it back to his family to buy food, but he's going to buy one more chocolate bar. And when he does, he finds a golden ticket. Many people try and bully him out of it, but the shopkeeper, in an ironic way, because he's not described as a good character in the beginning, helps Charlie out of this little mob and sends him home to look after his golden ticket. And that is pretty much where we start off explaining the entire beginning of the story, so to speak, before we go to the factory. We are now going to enter this wonderful place. The book now truly becomes a fantasy of some sorts. So I'm just going to erase this and we're going to start with the introduction of Mr. Wonka when they all arrive in the factory. So Wonka welcomes them all. And it's the first time that people have seen him in years. So obviously everyone is very excited. There's a big crowd of people trying to see him, but obviously only the 5 golden ticket holders and also their parents, except for Charlie, of course, it's Grandpa Joe that accompanies him. They are allowed to go inside. Mr. Wonka is explained as a very eccentric person, personality-wise, and even the way that he looks. Very colorful clothing, which obviously shows you what his personality is like as well. So we get a welcoming from Mr. Wonka, and now we continue. And it is not explicitly said to be a competition. This is something to remember, grade 9s. We are not told it's a little competition for who will get the factory. It is just a tour. So somehow these people are eliminated as if it is a competition, but they never know about it. Okay, so we've got Wonka's welcoming, which is the first thing about this point in the factory that we'll be talking about. So the second thing is, of course, Augustus. So the entire group reach a waterfall of just pure chocolate, which is used to churn up the chocolate and make it frothy. And Augustus, not being able to stop himself, goes and drinks from the river. Obviously he falls in and he sucked up a pipe, because you know that's what happens when you drink from chocolate fountains. So he again eliminated for his horrible quality of not being able to contain his hunger. So Augustus eliminated by gluttony. 3. We go on a little pink boat, that's like a boiled sweet, and they travel on this river through a tunnel with different entrances, but they reach an inventing room. Here there's also a gum machine, which brings us to Violet. Now Violet takes this piece of gum, which is said by Mr. Wonka to still be in the experimentation stage of the entire thing, and she just chews it. So she doesn't listen to her parents, she doesn't listen to Mr. Wonka, she just acts upon it because her obsession is gum, so she's going to take the piece of gum. And at first it doesn't appear to have any horrible side effects, but then she starts turning blue and purple, swelling up, and she becomes a blueberry. Obviously her parents are disgusted by this, and Mr. Wonka just tells them, okay, just take her to the dejuicing room, which sounds lovely. So Violet again eliminated for her obsession with gum. Now we continue on to the next thing, which is Veruca Salt. She's the next person to be eliminated. And Veruca Salt is eliminated because she wants everything. We have been introduced to the Oompa Loompas in the story already, and she wants an Oompa Loompa. They go on the pink boat ride, she wants a pink boat. Finally they get to a place where squirrels are sorting nuts. She wants a squirrel that can sort these nuts. Okay, we find out that she goes into this room. There are 100 squirrels. She just grabs one at random, and all the other squirrels basically attack her and pin her to the ground. One squirrel jumps up onto her chest, knocks her on the head, and decides she's a bad nut, which is a play on words here. So basically, a bad nut is an expression used for people who are very naughty or people who are very dysfunctional in their behavior. What the squirrels do is they throw her down the garbage chute, and soon her parents follow as well. So Veruca Salt eliminated because she was spoiled and couldn't take no for an answer. Again, her horrible personality trait showing that she's not fit to get this place. Because in a way, the factory is its own little test to see if you can run it. We continue on to the fifth point to talk about, which of course is Mike Seeley. So, Mike, again, we know he is obsessed with violence and television, so obviously that's his downfall as well. You could have, in a way, predicted this. So, Mike presses a button in a big glass elevator with lots of buttons, and without asking anyone's permission or whatever, he just randomly pushes one of the buttons which said, television, chocolate, room. And now they are taken to this place, and it is basically a transporter of sorts, or a teleporter rather, because you can take one thing, put it into this machine, and it will be teleported to a television. The idea is to send television via television, to send chocolate via television. And it works, but the problem is it comes out much smaller. Now this idea probably started with the size that TVs came out as, which weren't very big. So it always appeared like little people. So this probably led to this funny idea that if you send something via television, it will come out smaller on the other side. And Mike, yes, goes into the machine, it's teleported and appears and comes out on the other side very, very tiny. And he's taken to a machine where he will be stretched out. And then you will realize that all the characters have been eliminated. We now reach, in a sense, the climax of this entire story, this entire novel, and we find out what this tour was really about. And Mr. Wonka explains to Charlie that he is now the owner of the chocolate factory, or that he will be running the chocolate factory from then on. So Charlie now owns the factory. Now it is very important, and might not seem that way, but it is very important that we know it was not a competition in the beginning. Because if it was, then people might have acted differently from their actual character. They might have acted in a way to win the prize. But now, with people not knowing it's a competition, they acted normally. So they basically showed Mr. Wonka their true character. And all the other contestants, so to speak, or the golden ticket holders, they had bad character, and in that sense were eliminated. Only Charlie, who was very sincere, very selfless as a character, had the correct character in order to go through. So he was, in a sense, chosen by the factory itself and by Mr. Wonka. So, yes, Charlie now owns the factory, which is, of course, this part over here. We find out this poor little boy who is in poverty has now basically been given the biggest factory in the world concerning chocolates, of course. So, there we go. Now we need a very quick resolution, so a very quick end, and it is very simple. They just go to pick up the grandparents and to live in this chocolate factory happily ever after. Now that is the end of the novel. Some of you might have read even further than that, and then there's another novel which is called Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. That is not part of our novel, so we don't have to worry about that. That's an entire story on its own. So our story ends with them in the glass elevator going towards the factory to live there forever. Which is a happy ending, of course. Now, a couple of things to really focus on, grade 9s, when it comes to answering tests and so on in this type of novel, basically any type of novel. You can remember this for all of time. Things that are always focused on in the level of importance, according to Mr. Fouché himself, is first of all the theme. Because the theme is the main reason for the story existing, it is the moral of the story, it is always focused upon. Because in a way, that is why the story was created. To tell you this story of how character is very important. So always make sure you understand the theme. But you can't just go and study the theme and just say, okay, our character is very important and hope you're going to pass the test. Because you will have to prove this. How can you prove that is the theme? you will have to explain things from plot, which is also important. You have to explain the characters, perhaps the way they develop throughout the story, or the way they do not develop and stick to their morals. So there are different approaches here. But yes, the things to focus on, definitely theme. Always focus on the message. Another thing I would also like you to focus on is character. Because very often it's through character that I can explain the theme. I can, for instance, list all the golden ticket winners or founders and then tell you how each of them had a horrible character except for one who was the winner. This proves that character in the end was the reason for him winning. So there I just used characters to explain what theme is. Now, because these two things are very important, it doesn't mean the other things are not. You have to know the plot. If you don't know what the story is like, you can't use those events as reasoning. So you still need to use the others. Don't think that just because I am separating these two from the list, that the others are not important. So yes, still, setting, very important as well. I can use setting to say it helped with the theme because it shows poverty versus fantasy in this case. And then also plot, of course, and tone can also make an appearance where they might ask you, what do you think the author believes about poverty? Does poverty create the person? Then you will have to say no, because the theme is not what that is. The theme explains to us its character. So then you can use other things to answer that question as well. Okay, grade 9s, I'm going to stop there for today. I hope it wasn't too much information in one of these video lessons. But make sure you've got all of these notes on plot and all the other elements as well. So it's very important you've got all of this. Next time I see you in a classroom, we'll bring everything together and make sure it all corresponds. Thank you, grade 9s, for tuning in today to Quarantine English, and I hope to see you next time. Stay safe and goodbye.